Hi kids, it's Old Rotten Lady. I decided I wanted to make a festive build, making a house shaped like a Christmas tree. I decided to build it in Newcrest at the Oak Alcove residential lot, which is a 20 by 15 lot. Wanted to keep it relatively small, but I will say that the smallness of the build did end up being a little bit of a challenge. So this is my first attempt at my Christmas tree, 4 tiers of pine needles. And although I do end up bulldozing this is essentially the shape that I do end up going with, although I think I make the tree trunk / entrance just a little bit longer in my final attempt. Alright, after recentering this on the lot, my next job is to decorate the roof and really give it that Christmas tree vibe. So I of course went with a green grass outdoor flooring. I initially went with a really dark green, but decided to go with sort of the brighter green, and the tree trunk I think ends up being a wood. I tried to go with soil colors initially, but none of them were looking really fantastic. So I went with a dark wood color. The walls, I went with a dark green to give it a little bit of dimension, and then trying my best to color match the floor / roof to the walls. And since this tree trunk is going to be my entryway, added some columns. I do end up playing with the types of columns quite a bit, and you'll see that I start to have the entryway really take form instead of just slapping a door at the bottom of the trunk. And at this point, I think I've decided we can eliminate the walls and eventually the ceiling as well, and maybe still give it a look that from overhead it looks like a tree trunk. Trying to make sort of like a nice decorative entrance, remove the ceiling there you'll see, and I instead try to use an awning. I'm changing the wood tones here a little bit to match the columns. Here I am trying to custom place the awning because this item directly clips to a wall. I think it's just meant to be over a doorway, and so it doesn't necessarily like just floating in midair, which is what I'm trying to do with pieces 2 and 3 here. And you'll see that this color doesn't quite match the corbel, so I changed some of the colors there and trying to find a column that color matches a little bit better. And I was trying to add some additional columns, but it just clipped too much when it was close to the entryway, so I placed them 1 square out. Also, it looked very, very odd to me to have the wood of the entryway just look like it was placed right on top of the grass. So I created a little bit of a foundation, selected a green one for the pine tree body, and you'll see I'm trying to decide which fencing to use along the side of the entryway. The colors were really hard to match if I was looking at them from the left and the right because of the intense lighting that's going on this lot. So you will see me try to use the entryway to kind of get a better color match. Alright, now this is the fun part, and probably the part that I am most proud of is decorating the Christmas tree. Didn't have an action plan when I started, so my first guess was to use the pool lights and see if they could make good Christmas light decorations. I also found these little water fountains and thought that they might be sort of an interesting take on the garland. So went into live mode to see what that looked like. Ended up selecting a couple of water features to use. Is it really a good idea to have a water feature on your ceiling, just dripping water on a flat roof? Absolutely not, but it's The Sims and we don't really need to worry about insurance liabilities. So these pool lights were an option, but they didn't look that amazing. So what I did end up using was this little light from the Dine Out pack. They come in a couple of different swatches, and then on top of that, when I went into live mode, I assigned each light a color as well, and I think it really helped the colors pops, and it looked a little bit more like Christmas tree lights. I was trying to keep the packs for this build limited. In my head, I thought, okay, I can use base game, I can use the free holiday pack, and then a bunch of holiday decorations come from seasons as well, so I wanted to use seasons, but I just realized that these lights are from Dine Out, so you do need Dine Out as well. But I thought that this was the best option to get a colored light, so this is what we covered the entire ceiling with. Of course, I totally forgot. I decided to build it in winter, and I made my roof green, is that it's snowing in winter, and so the roof became covered in white. But I think it can still kind of work, right? If you just place the house and it's summer, it looks as it should. It's a green tree with multicolor lights. If you you place it in winter, you might want to change the wall color to be white instead of green, but it'll look a little bit more like a flocked Christmas tree. So I think it works. So the most difficult time-consuming part of this was really placing all the colors, selecting all the swatches, and then in live mode, selecting the light color that matched the swatch color. So I'm trying to select a door now for the entryway. I think I do end up going with that door, but I found it really hard to try to color match things in the entryway because of the shadows being created from the sunlight and the awning and everything else. So just placing all of the windows and doors on the wall to try to see what I could color match, but I did want the windows and the door to match each other. Here's me trying to change the color of the rest of the home to match the door a little bit better. And then windows, I end up using these windows with the shutters on the entryway and playing with the placement a little bit more, especially since I hadn't done any of the indoor floor plan yet. Now it is time for me to try to do the entryway now that I'm happy with what the outside looks like. Initially, I was thinking of doing one long hallway with a pointed room in the top, but decided that this house was not big enough to make that work in terms of room sizes. So I'm trying to make a little entryway here and figure out what a floor plan might look like. In the end, this ends up being a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and then basically like a very long, massive living area that includes a kitchen, a dining room, and sort of an office. You'll see the concept of the inside of the house was really just how much of the Christmas decorations can I get in one build, and I end up finding an item that is not Christmas related, but I incorporated it into my build, and from there decided that it's sort of Santa's house. Using the Sims lore, it is Father Winter's house, and that's why it looked like Christmas threw up on it, because the man is all about his job. So doing my best to try to fit a double bed into this build, but everything is quite tight, and of course the pointed angular walls where you'll see that I get about a 45-degree angle on these corners was really difficult to work around. You know, if you had to build your own home, I would recommend not building it in a Christmas tree shape. It took quite a bit of trial and error to try to figure out where to place the walls so that both sides of the bed could be accessed. Now I know that I could have just shoved it over to one side, and if two Sims were using the bed, they could scooch on over, but I didn't necessarily want to do that. I did want to leave a little access way completely around the bed so folks could use it. Basically everything that looked like it would be difficult to use, I play tested it, and it actually worked and it was functional. So at this point I am focusing on decorating the bedroom, finding a nice little rug to put inside it. What I do end up deciding is that the whole color scheme for this bedroom is like a candy cane color scheme, but with some dark wood as well. I was really lofty and I was trying to get this fireplace in the room and decided that I just didn't have space. There's no real living room in this home, so I create sort of a living space with a bookcase and a place to sit in the bedroom. So this is where I start trying to find decorations for the wall, and in doing that, basically select almost all of the Christmas decorations in the seasons pack, the holiday pack, and I just put them all over the house and can easily select them later, but it does get a little intense here. So we're gonna skip through because I do take quite a bit of time doing that. Now we're trying to find a wall color. I think I do end up going with just basically this red wallpaper with the crown and base molding. These decorations that are over the bed, I do end up moving most of them. I really liked this one decoration that was the painted wood panels that just had all these different Christmas swatches. In terms of lighting, I really liked this one lighted snowman. It is Father Winter that lives in this house, and in such case, there's going to be stacks of presents scattered around. There's going to be toys, including this little robot light bulb. I also wanted to make use of both types of Christmas trees. Was thinking maybe one could be indoors, one could be outdoors, but I did eventually run out of space indoors since it's such a narrow area, and it was sort of difficult to stick a Christmas tree in one of these 45-degree angle corners. So they both ended up being outdoor Christmas trees. At this point in time, I still had the entrance to the bedroom be in the hallway, so there would be 2 side-by-side doors or maybe like an archway into the main living area and then a door into the bedroom. However, taking up that much real estate for a wall just wasn't in the cards, so I reclaimed some space by knocking down those walls and then placing the door into the bedroom at the side near the fireplace. Getting back to the bedroom, I was thinking of putting a bedside table next to the bed. I decided it would be more advantageous to put a dresser in the corner. Right now we're trying to find a couch and a bookcase for this section of the room here. So you see me playing around with a couple of options. At first I thought maybe just 2 lounge chairs, one for Father Winter and whoever the equivalent of Mrs. Claus is in The Sims, but I ended up selecting a love seat as that seemed to be the most economical use. So the thing about these 45-degree angle corners, and especially since most of this house is built on diagonal facing walls, is that the lighting sort of glitches. So you'll see now and again some of the kitchen counters definitely don't work on diagonals. It creates a very odd shadow. There's also very odd shadows created on some of the wall decor lighting items, and I'm trying to find a nice piece of art to take up space on that wall. Eventually I go with something that looks like it could kind of be the Arctic or maybe the North Pole. And now we're going to move on to our second room, which is the restroom. Wanted to keep this very small, just a sink, toilet, and enough space for a shower. And I also forgot that I need to put windows on the rest of the building. I do want everything to look like Christmas threw up on this house, but I didn't want to repeat color themes in each room. So I decided that I would make the bathroom sort of a icy blue winter theme. And you can see I've sectioned off the bathroom for a shower. And then at this point I realized that I had to use either University or Snowy Escape to get a wall shower to work in the setup. So I decided to use Snowy Escape since there is just more of a wintry theme to Snowy Escape. You'll see me using the mosaic wallpaper to really sell into the theme. Here's that issue that we have with the counters on a diagonal wall that didn't look really fantastic with the lighting, so decided to go with just a standalone sink. And now I'm playing around with the placement of the toilet and the sink, trying to figure out what the best layout is. Since we're going with the winter blue theme, just trying to find both a toilet and a sink that were the same color of blue, and preferably one that worked with the existing mosaic and tiles. So going with these 2 options, we put a little trash can there. Speaking of trash cans, I realized I needed an outdoor trash can to make the house functional, and then while we were at it, selecting sort of a thematically appropriate mailbox, which since it's in the outside of the building, I just wanted to keep it sort of green and out of the way. Same for the trash can. So here is the item that sort of sealed the deal in terms of this being Father Winter's house, is this high-tech global map. I figured that would be a perfect thing to be in Father Winter's office, where he could map out his route. I figure it's interactive. He could see where times are. He could see all the houses that he needs to visit, and that would be the feature piece in his office. So I put some wall sconces outside, or over in the shower, we're putting in some wall-mounted shampoo and conditioner. Right now we're trying to decorate the bathroom with a hand towel, toilet paper, hand soap, a couple of other accessories, and then hanging that robe on the entry doorway. In the entryway, we did remove the other walls. We're putting in a umbrella rack, a couple of shelves, put in a decorative Yule log, and thought it would be a nice area to display the holiday cards that Clement Frost has received, and then thinking of it as an area for Christmas cards and just some additional garlands and holly just to keep the entrance looking really festive. I also used another welcome mat that is both green and red, as I decided this whole entire great room is going to be green and red, whereas the bedroom was a little bit more red and white. I also put in some candles and a stack of presents. I figured Father Winter, especially at this time of the year, is probably just really stocking up, trying to find little nooks and crannies to put ready-made presents in. Trying to find an appropriate wallpaper for the great room was a little bit difficult, and I ended up going with this stripy wallpaper. It's a little reminiscent of candy canes with the stripes, but the kitchen, I decided to go with sort of a green tile tile. Found a attractive little red trash can that worked really well in the kitchen. And luckily we have Christmas red refrigerators and ovens and cabinets. I struggled a little bit with the placement of the fridge and the oven because I knew that it may barely work as a functioning kitchen. Although again, I did play test this, so this seems to be a fully functioning kitchen. For upper cabinetry, I did want to use one of the alternative swatches that had plates in it, and then the really long cabinet that's basically floor to ceiling was a really great option for filling up that corner area. Put a little green rug in front of the sink, and then just to counterbalance the very red and very white wallpaper in the entire house, that I would go with shaggy green carpet. However, carpet in the kitchen is not advised, so to finish off the kitchen, we put in that red tile and the green tile on the back wall, placed in a fire alarm. Moving back into the rest of the home, I'd previously identified a really long dining table decorated for Christmas. Decided to go with the green swatch since there was so much red in the kitchen and there is not quite enough space to really have a ton of seating. And I really like the ceiling light that had some pine foliage sticking out of it. Seemed very Christmassy without being over the top Christmas. We still have that fireplace. We're sticking a couple of present piles in the corners. Basically, Father Winter is stockpiling his presents, putting them on tables, putting them in corners, anywhere that he can put them in preparation for the big day. So we've moved from the front of the house towards the back of the house. Now we are going all the way to the back of the house to work on Santa's home office. We've got these little snowflake lights. As you can see here, this back wall is very, very dark and all of the lighting doesn't quite connect or string together. There's a big gap in between them, and that's because diagonal walls take up more space than straight walls. And of course, all the decorations are designed to work on straight walls. Finding a desk for Father Winter to work from, and I figured this book could be something like Father Winter's list that he checks twice before delivering his presents. Placed some ribbons on the wall here, thinking that they're different accolades that Father Winter has won perhaps in the past. And now we're moving on to this middle section that at this point in time just has some cabinetry. I figure that's where the dishes for the dining table would have been kept. Back to the home office, we found a cool stack of books. It looks kind of ancient. Figured that those could just be on the floor. Perhaps it's different lists that Father Winter has been working on. One of the Christmas ornament decorations looked really good hanging on the doorway, so we stuck it in there. And then I finally found my spot for the lighted snowman in the corner. In this no man's land, I put in a little statue of a gnome. I'm thinking this is an elf butler, and he's holding up his tray, bringing something to Father Winter. And then we have this very festive holiday table. Looks like the type of tablecloth that you'd put up at a party. Maybe it's made out of paper. I have the decorative Yule log right next to it. My initial thinking was the elf was bringing Santa a stack of readily wrapped presents for his pile, but I did eventually change it. We ended up putting a tea kettle there. I figured the tea kettle could have hot chocolate, nice little garland outdoors. And now we're placing our two little Christmas trees. One of them is a much better source of lighting than the other. So here on this back wall, you can see what happens on the diagonal with some of the garlands, the lighted garlands. There's a lot of shadow on them for some reason. But that being said, that little accessory table, we're decorating that with plates and some party crackers and a Yule log cake and then a stack of presents. So I will be quite honest, the last thing that I really thought about for this home was the landscaping. The most challenging thing about the landscaping is from the top down, I still wanted that crisp Christmas tree outline to be very apparent, and I didn't want the landscape to detract away from the shape. So I felt that I had to very tightly align to the existing corners. I really found it quite challenging, placing some additional windows that I forgot to place previously. So initially I thought of putting just these long bushes in the front, but I did end up going with a crispier hedge both on the front and the back side of the building. So what I'm doing in the back door to help continue that line is put some malva, which is, I guess, just some ground cover, but I kind of think of it as like almost like creeping ivy or creeping thyme. And I decided to replicate that in the inside corners of the pine tree. Now that I figured out how exactly to fill in the corners for one side, we're doing the same treatment on the other. And because I thought that the front of the house was just a little too boring, decided to put in a little bit of terrain paint. All of the dirts were just kind of a little too stark. I ended up finding this nice little pine covered dirt terrain paint that I thought was pretty perfect for a very Christmassy build. And then for some reason, I just didn't think I was quite done. Felt like a little bit of terrain, not anything ridiculous, just a little bit of a 3-dimension to the front yard might make it a little bit more interesting. Even though it wasn't a huge change, I think it helps it look a little bit more natural, especially since there's not a lot of landscaping going out in the front. So doing what I could with the limitations at my disposal, and to be quite honest, my limited skill with landscaping. So there we are. There is our completed build. So now we're going to do a little home tour. This is what it looks like in build mode. No snow, no nothing. This is our front entrance. As we head inside, we see the pine needles on the floor, our wooden entryway, and this nice little garland outside the door. As we enter, we see a kitchen to our left, and to our right we have an entryway, some toys, some decorations, some Christmas cards. In our kitchen we see our his and hers aprons, our cookware, our festive holiday decorations, and of course our berry red kitchen. Moving in to our left, we see our fireplace decorated with nutcrackers and candles, and then behind the door with the wreath we find a bedroom with a double bed, a dresser, some wooden wall decorations, and of course a pine tree garland with some ornaments above the bed. We have a very large chandelier light, and over in the corner we have a little table, our bookcase, our couch to sit at and read some cozy books. As we head outside the bedroom, we head into the dining area with our lovely feature light, our long dining table with 3 chairs at most, which is what we could fit inside. And then as we head towards the back of the home, you can see a lot more presents piled up on a table at the corner of the home. And then as we head into the door with the red bow, we see that we've found the restroom with a very beautiful mosaic of Mount Komorebi. Very simple bathroom, just a tile shower, sink and a toilet. And then here is our elf butler. He's really a gnome, but our elf butler bringing us some hot cocoa, a storage hutch for our porcelain, and then some party decorations on a table. And then towards the back of the house, this is Santa's home office. He has his book of the list of good and bad children's names, a map of the world, and a ton of books. Some awards he's won, his snowman friends. So that is the home tour of this Christmas tree house. Listen, I don't really know if anyone would ever want to play in this, but if you want to place it in your world, have a nice little lit Christmas tree to look at night, you can find it at the EA Gallery for The Sims 4. My username is oldrottenlady. Merry Christmas to those of you that celebrate, and if you do not, have a wonderful holiday season with your friends and your family, and of course, everyone have a happy new year. Have fun. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye.